Welcome back! In this video coaching session, we'll focus on designing your work breakdown structure with several examples in Microsoft Project. Let's get started. Now we'll focus on mastering the WBS design with Microsoft Project by actually opening up project schedules and working with it. But before we do, it's important to understand that a good work breakdown structure includes both the management and the development lifecycle deliverables. Including the management and the development deliverables ensures maximum project control and has a direct impact on your success. A work breakdown structure is a roadmap that outlines the scope of the project, the deliverables, and the work. Know the life cycle of the methodology you use. The methodology will determine how you document the phases and deliverables of your work breakdown structure. So let's go over to our project schedule template and take a look at how we define the project lifecycle methodology. Okay, so here's a project schedule, and as you saw in the previous slide, I had entered the project lifecycle phases. And within each phase, there's a milestone. Let me just collapse these and I'll keep one open. There's always a begin milestone and an end milestone for that phase. And then we're going to actually add the deliverables and the activities in the phases that we've defined here. Okay, so your schedule, when your template rather, should pretty much look like this. And I'll actually have a copy of this available for you. But initially, your schedule should look like this. This shows the life cycle phases, and then you'll put your deliverables inside. Now going back to the presentation. An example of a waterfall design and an example of an agile design, you would have in waterfall you would have your phases as initiation, planning, execution, control, and the deliverables might be project charter, business plan, budget, etc. Under the planning phase, some deliverables might be business requirements, technical requirements, initial project schedule, communications plan, etc. Under the execution phase, some of the deliverables might be develop XYZ, or develop whatever it is. You'd have different deliverables that you're working on in the execution phase, and as well as test, train, and implement would be deliverables in the execution phase. And in a waterfall project for closeout, you might see lessons learned, stakeholder review, archive project documents, etc. This is an example of how a waterfall work breakdown might appear in terms of the deliverables. For an agile methodology, you would still have the project lifecycle phases. The deliverables would be different to some degree. In the initiation of your project, you would still have a project charter, your business plan, you define your budget, etc. Planning, depending on the type of methodology you're using, you would plan the product features or the release backlog or the sprint backlog, depending on the methodology you're using. You would still have planning deliverables in the planning phase. Your planning phase and your execution phases might overlap and be iterative in an agile project, but that's okay. You can still define the deliverables for your work breakdown structure using Microsoft Project. Here in the execution, you can see you might have deliverables for product A, and the first iteration of product A would be, and then you have your development deliverables, your test deliverables, training deliverables, and implementation deliverables. And for iteration 2 of product A, you would again have your development, test, training, etc., whatever your activities are for that deliverable. And then you would have product B under execution, and so on. So that would be in the execution phase of the work breakdown structure. And under closeout, whatever your closeout methodology requires you to do. In this case, it just mirrors what I have in waterfall, which is lessons learned, stakeholder review, and archive the documents. So as I mentioned, with using Microsoft Project, we define the project lifecycle phases: initiation, planning, execution, and control, and closeout. The details of your project schedule go inside the lifecycle phases. And you add your milestones within the lifecycle phases. So in this example, you see the begin milestone for the beginning of the initiation phase, and as well the complete milestone. You add your project phase milestones, including the management milestones. So for example, signing off on a deliverable, you would include that. And as I mentioned before, in your life cycle phases, you would have a milestone for the beginning of that phase and a milestone for the completion of that phase. We're going to use these milestones in our reporting in later lessons, but you would add your milestones within the life cycle phases, and you can see as an example, here's a complete milestone for the phase being complete. So insert the Wbs column into your project schedule if that helps you see the work breakdown structure. Simply go into the project schedule, right click on the column, and then select insert column, and you can hit the letter W and it'll scroll to Wbs, select that, click on OK, and it inserts a Wbs column for you. So inserting Wbs column helps many people see the relationships between tasks, because you can see the numbers here are related to the deliverables for that row. Review the project charter, where you have documented your project scope. Know what is in scope before you start creating the next layer of your work breakdown structure. So next we'll add the work deliverables. So let's go to our project schedule, and I've created a schedule with deliverables in it. Where is it? Here we go. So here's an example. We have the work breakdown structure column added in. Let me just collapse this so it's easier to see. And when I open up, actually I put them in the planning phase. So this is an example of deliverables. Plan selection, plan redraw with modifications, plumbing plans, electrical plans, obtain permits. These are deliverables if we're working, let's say, on a construction project that you would put in under execution. Let's collapse planning. Here's an example. Under execution, some of the deliverables are, the foundation, build the shell, rough installs, drywalls, and cabinets. These are deliverables that we know we have to work on. Okay, so that's an example of deliverables. So after adding the deliverables, then you add the activities of the project. And going back to our schedule, using the execution phase, the deliverables. Let's say let's use cabinets as a deliverable. The activities of delivering the cabinets include the creating the kitchen cabinets, family room cabinets, first bathroom vanity cabinets, second bathroom vanity cabinets. For the drywall deliverable, you can hang the drywall, finish the drywall. These are some of the activities involved. For the rough install, there's the rough plumbing, rough electrical, heating system. So these are the activities under the deliverable. Building a shell means the activities are building the frame, the roof of the house, etc. So the green again represents the project lifecycle phases, the blue the deliverables, and then we have the project activities. So another way to look at this is we have the end product here at level 1. Level 2 here would be the deliverables, and then the child tasks, activities involved in creating those deliverables. So just visually, this is another way to understand the layers involved with creating a work breakdown structure. Going back into the project schedule, here's another schedule that I opened up that actually has the tasks or activities behind the deliverables. So let's say in the initiation phase, you have to a deliverable in terms of the project scope, and then determining the project scope, securing project sponsorship, defining preliminary resources, securing core resources would be part of the deliverable. The work activities that are part of that. Under planning, this is another example of details for the deliverables under planning. We know in planning we have a design that's a deliverable, and part of that would include the draft of the preliminary infrastructure design and developing the detailed infrastructure design. Those are deliverables, and the activities involved would be preliminary hardware design, preliminary software design, preliminary communications design, preliminary connectivity of LAN WAN, preliminary support environment design, preliminary infrastructure design. These are activities under this deliverable, child activities. And further looking at the develop detailed infrastructure design, here you see the activities under that deliverable, which are develop detailed hardware design, develop detailed software design, develop detailed communication. So this is an example of how in Microsoft Project, when you enter these tasks, of course you indent them, and you add your activities. Okay. Now let's collapse this and actually go to another schedule. Okay, here's a schedule that has more of the task details in it, and here we can see after you've added your deliverables and the activities within the deliverables, you'll want to also include milestones for when those deliverables will start and when they'll end. And once you've set your schedule up so that that's clearly defined, so for example, I went ahead and put in begin scope and when scope was complete. After I know what my deliverables and activities are at a high level, I would put a milestone for when they would begin. So for example, with design, I would have a milestone for begin design. That way I could report on when design is starting and when it's ending from a management perspective. Once you've filled in the details of the activities in the work package, then you can go ahead and fill in the estimates. So you would insert the work column. Oops. There we go. And you have your duration column. You would put in the estimates for how many hours it would take to complete that task. And if it's going to take 8 hours but over a 10-day period, then you would define the duration as 10 days. So you would then work through each item and put in that detail. So this is actually an example of how you use Microsoft Project to build your work breakdown structure. If inserting the Wbs column is something that helps you see the relationship between tasks, then you can do that. So using a Wbs column will allow you to visually see the relationship between your deliverables. But once you've defined the deliverables and the activities under the deliverables, then go in and add the work, the duration, and the predecessor relationship. By default, project may fill in some data, like for example in this row I see the predecessor, it linked it to row 5. I don't want to have a predecessor value linked to a summary item because I want to be able to control the information, the details under that. So I'm going to move that down. But basically what I would probably want to do is, for example, have the scope begin once there's some other milestone that ends. Let's just say, sign off on business charter or something, or project charter. So sign off on project charter would be a milestone. And let's say I would have my scope begin when that milestone ends. So I would set the predecessor to 6. So what you'll want to do is go through, add your work estimates, add your durations, add your predecessor relationships after you have outlined your work breakdown structure.
So this is
Here's how you use Microsoft Project to create a work breakdown structure. Save your work breakdown structure as a template so that you can reuse the information that you've already created. This will save you a significant amount of time when creating your next work breakdown structure in your next project. Now, take a look at the homework below, and I'll see you next week when we'll cover more information that will help you create and manage project schedules. Have an excellent day.